Welcome to today's advanced English lesson. In this episode, you will practice real natural English, the kind you hear in popular podcasts and deep conversations. We will focus on three big skills. First, thinking in English instead of translating. Second, using advanced conversation phrases that sound natural and confident. And third, telling short personal stories to connect with people. You don't need a notebook, but it can help. Just relax and listen. Let the language enter your ears and your mind. Let's begin. Many people study English for years and still feel shy, slow, and unnatural when they speak. Usually, the problem is not grammar. The real problem is mindset and habits. Let's start with 3 mindset rules for advanced English. The first rule, stop chasing perfection. Perfection kills your confidence. Advanced speakers make small mistakes, but they keep going. They don't apologize for every word. You don't need perfect English. You need clear English. Mistakes are proof that you are actually using the language, not just thinking about it. The second rule, focus on ideas, not individual words. In real conversations, native speakers follow ideas, not grammar rules. When you listen, ask yourself, what is the main idea? What is the speaker trying to say? When you speak, ask yourself, what is the simplest way to express my idea? Your ideas are more important than perfect grammar. If people understand you, you are already successful. The third rule, think in English, not in your native language. Translating every sentence in your head is like driving a car with the handbrake on. To think in English, use short, simple sentences in your head during the day. Describe what you are doing. I'm making coffee, I'm leaving the house, I'm driving to work. You can think in English, even with simple words. Small English thoughts every day reprogram your brain. Now that your mindset is ready, let's move to advanced conversation phrases, the kind of phrases you hear in popular podcasts and interviews. Imagine you're listening to someone who explains an idea in a smart or unusual way. A natural reaction in English is, "That's an interesting way to put it." You can use this when you want to show respect and interest in how someone expressed something. For example, someone says, "I think failure is just unpaid education." You can answer, "That's an interesting way to put it." With one sentence, you sound engaged, thoughtful, and natural. Another powerful reaction is, "I've never thought about it like that." Use this when someone gives you a new perspective. For example, someone says, "Silence is also a form of communication." You can answer, "You're right. I've never thought about it like that." This shows that you are open-minded and curious. Now let's talk about giving your opinion politely. Instead of always saying, "In my opinion," you can say, "From my perspective." This sounds a bit more natural in many situations. For example, "From my perspective, remote work is great, but it can be lonely." You're sharing your view without sounding aggressive or absolute. Another soft way to share your opinion is, "I tend to think that." It suggests that this is your usual way of thinking, but you are open to other ideas. You might say, "I tend to think that social media is a tool. It depends on how we use it." Now let's look at asking deeper questions, like a good podcast host. A very useful question is, "What do you mean by that?" Use it when you want more clarity. For example, someone says, "You need to design your environment, not your willpower." You can answer, "What do you mean by that?" This invites the other person to explain their idea more deeply. Another strong question is, "Can you give me a concrete example?" The word concrete means clear, specific, and practical. You might say, "That's interesting. Can you give me a concrete example from your life?" This pushes the conversation from theory into real life. Now, how do we agree and disagree politely? One very useful phrase is, "I see where you're coming from, but..." You can use it to disagree without sounding rude. For example, "I see where you're coming from, but I still feel that habits matter more than motivation." Another soft disagreement is, "I'm not sure I completely agree." You are not attacking the other person. You are just sharing a different view. For example, "I'm not sure I completely agree. I think personality also plays a big role." So far, you have learned how to react with interest, how to share your opinion politely, how to ask deeper questions, and how to agree or disagree like a native speaker. Now let's go deeper with a podcast-style monologue. Just listen and imagine the situations in your mind. When people try to change their lives, they usually think about big actions. They say things like, from tomorrow I'll wake up at 5 a.m., I'll go to the gym every day, I'll read one book per week. It sounds impressive. It looks good on social media, but after 3 days, they are exhausted and they quit. The truth is, real change is usually boring and invisible. Nobody sees you when you decide to drink water instead of soda. Nobody celebrates when you study English for just 10 minutes. Nobody claps for you when you go to bed 30 minutes earlier. But these small decisions, repeated every day, create a different version of you. Think about it like this. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you read a page of a book, you are voting to become a reader. When you speak English for 5 minutes, you are voting to become a confident speaker. When you choose to listen instead of react angrily, you are voting to become a calm person. The problem is, we often wait to feel motivated. We wait for the perfect moment. But motivation is like the weather. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it's raining. If you depend on motivation, you will not be consistent. Instead, you can design your life so that good decisions are easy and bad decisions are hard. If you want to read more, put a book on your pillow so you see it every night. If you want to speak more English, put your headphones next to your coffee cup so you remember to listen to an English podcast in the morning. If you want to avoid junk food, don't buy it in the first place. You don't need to become a new person overnight. You just need to be slightly better than yesterday. 1 more glass of water, 5 more minutes of English, 1 more kind message to a friend. In 1 day, it feels like nothing. In 1 year, it can change everything. Now think for a moment. Why do big dramatic changes usually fail after a few days? What does it mean for you when you hear, every action is a vote? What is the problem with waiting for motivation? And what is one small habit you could add to improve your English? Hold your answers in your mind. This reflection is part of advanced learning. Now let's move to storytelling practice. Advanced speakers are usually good storytellers. They don't just answer questions, they tell short stories with a clear structure. Here is a simple and powerful story structure that many podcast guests use. Past, problem, action, lesson. First, you briefly describe the past situation. Second, you mention the problem. Third, you explain the action you took. Finally, you share the lesson you learned. Let's hear an example about a mistake. In the past, I tried to improve my English by doing everything at once. I bought 3 different textbooks, I joined 2 online courses, and I promised myself I would study for 2 hours every day. The problem was that my plan was completely unrealistic. After 1 week, I felt exhausted and guilty, and I stopped studying altogether. So I decided to simplify my approach. I focused on 1 book, 1 podcast, and just 30 minutes of study per day. What I learned from this is that consistency beats intensity. You can use the same structure for your own life. Think of a mistake you made, maybe in learning or in work. Describe the past situation, explain the problem, say what you did, and finish with 1 clear lesson. Now, let's use the structure to talk about a difficult period in life. A few years ago, I went through a difficult period because I lost my job unexpectedly. At the time, I felt anxious and uncertain about the future. One thing that really helped me was creating a small daily routine, waking up early, exercising, and studying a new skill. Looking back, I realized that the crisis pushed me to grow and redesign my life in a better way. Again, you can copy this structure, a difficult period, your feelings, one thing that helped you, and the lesson you learned. Finally, let's apply the structure to a small success. Recently, I achieved a small but meaningful success. I finished my first book entirely in English. At first, I thought it was impossible because the vocabulary seemed too advanced for me. To make it happen, I read just 10 pages per day and underlined every new word. This experience showed me that big goals become realistic when you break them into tiny daily steps. You can use this same pattern to talk about your own successes, even small ones. Advanced English doesn't mean big words. It means clear ideas and strong structure. Now let's review some advanced vocabulary from this lesson and connect each word with an image in your mind. The first word is exhausted. Exhausted means extremely tired, with almost no energy left. Imagine coming home after working all day and studying all night. You are not just tired, you are exhausted. For example, after trying to study for 5 hours straight, I felt completely exhausted. The second word is consistent. Consistent means doing something regularly without big breaks. A consistent person doesn't study for 1 day and then stop for 3 weeks. They do a little bit every day. For example, you don't need perfect English, you need consistent practice. The third word is realistic. Realistic means possible in real life, not just in your imagination. Reading 10 pages a day is realistic. Reading 500 pages a day is probably not realistic for most people. For example, studying for 15 minutes a day is a realistic goal. The fourth word is crisis. A crisis is a very difficult or dangerous time. It can be personal, like losing a job, or national, like an economic crisis. For example, losing my job felt like a crisis, but it also forced me to grow. The fifth word is perspective. Perspective is the way you see or understand something. Two people can look at the same situation and have different perspectives. For example, from another perspective, failure can be a useful teacher. The sixth word is concrete. Concrete means clear, specific, and practical. A concrete example is a real-life example, not just theory. For example, can you give me a concrete example of that idea? The seventh word is intensity. Intensity is the strength or power of something. High intensity means strong and powerful. Low intensity means gentle and light. For example, high intensity is exciting, but low intensity habits are easier to keep. Exhausted, consistent, realistic, crisis, perspective, concrete, intensity. These words are common in advanced conversations, self-development podcasts, and deep discussions in English. We are now near the end of this lesson. In this session, you trained your mindset for thinking in English, learned natural conversation phrases, listened to a deep monologue about habits, practiced telling stories using clear structures, and reviewed advanced vocabulary. Real progress comes from small, consistent actions. So here is your homework, which you can follow after listening. First, choose one small daily habit for your English. For example, 10 minutes of listening or 5 sentences of writing. Second, use one of today's phrases, such as, from my perspective, or can you give me a concrete example, in a real conversation or online comment. Third, tell one of your stories, a mistake, a difficult period, or a small success, using the structures you learned today. Remember, you can think in English. You are becoming more confident every day. Small steps create big results. Thank you for spending this time with me. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep growing. I'll see you in the next lesson.